Welcome to People Talking Sitting Down. These criminals,
Yeah.
the hiding in plain sight thing is you take what people trust most and then you try to leverage that for, I would imagine, a long time to build a relationship.
This individual was a pastor at a church in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and he stole their life savings. And I have one of his victims that says this individual stole all of my money so that when I needed money for my medical expenses for my wife, I didn't have it. And I show that to my audiences to say, that's what elder financial abuse really looks like.
Awesome. We're off and running. Well, John, thank you so much for coming in. The way that I set up these podcasts, a lot of times we talk about, who you are, where you're from, things like that. We get, right into that. But with the topic that we're talking about today, if you don't mind just getting right into what you do, because bringing you up here to talk about, I've shared with friends and family, being excited about this conversation and talking about elder financial abuse. When I say that term, people are like, what? Like, what is that? And I think providing just off the jump, what exactly elder financial abuse contains, because it, as we were talking about, it's a much bigger problem than people really realize.
Oh, absolutely. So first of all, thank you very much for having me here. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled that we're able to talk about what we're doing to combat elder financial abuse. So we set the center up. But what we did is we wanted to create this center so that we can provide education on what elder financial abuse really looks like. More importantly, what we do, we look at the crime of elder financial abuse through the eyes of the predator. And I think that's what makes us different from any other group out there. And we hope that's helpful. But what I want individuals to do is understand exactly how the predators operate, so that if you can understand how the predator operates, maybe you can detect that predator a couple of steps before they take your entire life savings. So that's what we do.
Yeah. And that's great. So the on the predator side, you've got, we'll get into where these people are coming from, but on the victim side of who's being targeted in these kinds of scams, schemes, what are the most popular ones, and what are the ones that people might not be as aware of?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we hear most about is the grandparent schemes, the sweepstakes schemes, and all of these schemes that are conducted either on a computer or on a telephone. These are bad. They really are. But there's other types of schemes, and those are face-to-face. And these face-to-face predators actually scare me most, because they're able to conduct the investment schemes, the Ponzi schemes. And the convicted predators that we see, there's one in particular, his name's Scott Cohen, who stole $300 million through a Ponzi investment scheme. And he did it face-to-face. And there's another one out of Dallas, Doc Gallagher, who went around churches and he hid in plain sight on Christian radio.
Wow.
And stole $32 million. So how do these face-to-face predators, hiding in plain sight, hiding on Christian radio, able to be successful? And that's what we explore.
And so what is it? And that's the interesting thing. And I haven't studied too much or done a ton of research on again, like you said, these criminals. Again, the hiding in plain sight thing is it's especially when you tie like things like religion into it. You take what people trust most, and then you try to leverage that for, I would imagine, a long time to build a relationship and to build that trust up. And sometimes I see these things, and like that's it's a big thing down south. A lot of these religion's different in different parts of the country, and it's so at the core of people in the South. And I wonder, because where are you from originally?
Arkansas,
yeah. So that's right in the heart of
absolutely.
And up here, I think it's just a different way of life, and it almost seems, I always joke, like it seems like it's a different country. If you talk about down south, and then you talk about say like the Seattle area, or you talk about New England, Florida, like we're all the United States, but it's so like there's more differences here than across Europe.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So where did Doc Gallagher operate, right? The Dallas-Fort Worth area, right? So huge religious setting there, and he was able to go through those churches. So I have another case that I show in my presentation. I show that it's I believe it's the first case that I show in my presentation. I say, I just want to set the tone for this presentation. But this individual was a pastor at a church in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and he ran a Ponzi investment scheme against his parishioners, approximately 100 of them, and he stole their life savings. And I have one of his victims that says, this individual stole all of my money so that when I needed money for my medical expenses for my wife, I didn't have it. And he's absolutely heartbroken and he's crying. And I show that to my audiences to say, that's what elder financial abuse really looks like. And this predator, the church pastor, used what you said, to trust through religion, but again, hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
So how do these predators hide in plain sight and are successful?
What do they? So just to the organization is called the Center for Combating Elder Financial Abuse, and you found it. When did you start the organization?
Started in February 8th, 2021, less than 2 weeks after I retired from the FBI.
Yeah, so I would love to hear that. I think you told me a little bit about that story, but I'd love to hear more of like the, you spent a long time in the FBI. You spent a long time working. It sounds like you got right back to work.
Yeah, I did. I mean, it was a passion. Didn't realize what all was entailed, where I was really going, but I knew that I wanted to get started right away. I mean, I just felt the urge to.
Yeah.
So I did. Set it up and then went through the processes to get our IRS 501c3 status and just learning along the ways, right? So this center is a passion-driven center. I have no experience with 501c3s prior to this, right? I tell people is, right, I'm an investigator. I did that 24 years. Prior to that, 9 years in the Army.
Yeah.
I have little experience on this, but I'm going to do it and I'm going to start right now. So that's what we've been doing.
What was your first moment of realizing the impact that this was having on people's lives? Like, I'm sure that you studied or you were aware of it, but what was your first, like that, where it hit you in the chest and it's like, oh my goodness, somebody just got their entire life rocked by, whether it be, again, life savings. And another thing that we'll get to is the secondary impacts that you spoke of, about how it affects everybody else in the family, things like that. But like, what was the first either story or case that you came across of or firsthand dealt with that you were, seeing?
So how it all came about is somebody that I knew back in 2012, I thought I saw allegations of elder financial abuse. And from that, I started looking at our national effort to combat elder financial abuse. And I thought that we could probably do better at serving our nation's elderly and protecting them from these financial predators. So from 2012 until I retired in January 2021, I kept looking, and I saw the gaps there. And I said, no, something has to be done. And what can I do? I don't really know. But maybe if we study the predators, and it really goes back to FBI, but it also goes back to military too, right? You study your enemy. You got to know your enemy. If you know your enemy as well as they know themselves, okay, now you have a fighting chance, right?
Yeah.
But in sports too, right? I mean, we're here in Philadelphia, and I'm an Eagles fan, right? Are they studying the Buccaneers? Yeah, absolutely. Of course they are.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to go about it, because with a lot of these organizations, not that it's a bad thing at all. It's anybody who's doing work to help others, I think, is a good thing. But a lot focuses on the victims of these, again, scam schemes, and no matter what that would be. But understanding the people who are doing it, and like a little bit of background. I don't know if I mentioned, but like I worked in the cryptocurrency digital assets industry, and I happened to work for a company that was secretly funded by Sam Bankman-Fried, who is probably like the Bernie Madoff of our generation. And to see what happened was so much. I mean, it was a scam scheme, whatever you want to call it. It was a house of cards that fell down, and the facade around it. Like I'm fascinated by him as a person. It's like, what was there? Were there really good intentions? Were there not? But like studying those kinds of people and thinking about like why do they do what they do? So what are some of the things that you've learned on that side of things? Where these people are coming from? Why is it something? Do they like get off on the especially with elderly people? Like I don't, anybody in general, but like elderly people, the lady that's like limping across or like now slowly walking across the street with her cane, like you're gonna take her money?
Oh yeah, right? Because Predator 101, right? You got to look at the crime through the eyes of the predator. So what do predators look for? Whether they're financial predators, but I also look at homicidal predators or even sexual predators. What's a predator looking for? They're looking for the weak. It's the strong versus the weak. So yeah, you're looking for weak. You're looking for weaknesses that the predator can exploit. And that's what these predators do. So going back to this Doc Gallagher going around churches, right? He's exploiting that weakness that these individuals have by trusting so much in whoever comes through that door, spouting a religious activity.
So how did he do it? How intentional was it? Was it something that was, another thing is like kind of related to the FTX type stuff. Like, is it something that started small and got out of control? Like with that case, was it something that was like, it was this big plan mapped out, or was it like, hey, I took advantage of this one lady's, life savings? And
that's not what I have not figured that out with him. This is what I figured out with Doc Gallagher, and it's not that much. But what I do have, I have his promotional video, and I show this to the audiences. First of all, I show the press release from Tarrant County, Texas, where he definitely stole $32 million, and he was sentenced to 3 life terms. And then I say, okay, this guy is a convicted predator, but I have his promotional video. Let's take a look at that. And it's a very good video. It's a very elaborate video. And he does a very good job selling himself as an expert. And then halfway through it, it's him speaking. And at the end of it, he goes, with the power of God, a better place.
yeah.
So he knows how to manipulate, and he's phenomenal at it. So you said, what's his motivations? He does. He gets a thrill out of it. He really, really does. And that's the motivation. So I'll go to Scott Cohen, who stole $300 million. So let's talk about that. There's 2 aspects to $300 million. First of all, who needs $300 million, right? Aren't you good at 30 million? Aren't you good at 3 million? I mean, 30 million. Can't you go buy all the cars, all the boats, all the vacations, all the homes that you want?
Yeah.
So it goes past that, right? I mean, at 100 million, he kept going. 200 million, he kept going. It only got to 300 million before he was stopped. So why is it? It's not the simple explanation of greed. It goes far beyond greed. And that's what I explain to audiences too, that once these predators latch onto you, they don't care. They don't care how much financial ruin they're creating in their wake. They really don't. They don't even think twice about it. They just go.
Do you think that these people are like sociopathic? Do you think that there's something that, because it is interesting to think about the personality makeup, and I try to think a lot about who we all are as humans and the power that we have inside of us. And one thing that Max and I were talking about beforehand is like from a creative aspect. Like I think everybody has a special talent and a special ability within themselves. And some people are able to have the chance and opportunity at the right time in their life to go chase it. And some aren't, maybe they have children a little bit younger and maybe they just never were able to chase their dreams. But because I think that good lies within everybody, and that talent and the ability to do the right thing lies within everybody, I also think that there's evil that lies within everybody too. And I think that that's something I asked our mutual friend Jim Diorio, who we'll get to later, but like what is it within these people? Is it evil? Is it something that went wrong? Is it something that, again, you're talking about like trying to get control, and feeling that part of it? Like what the common thread, because we're all humans, and I just get so caught up in these things. It's like, what happened? What went wrong in their life to get them to that point? Because like part of me, like I don't want to believe that people are born this evil.
See, I don't know. I don't know. I think in some instances they are born evil. I don't know. Yeah. I'm venturing into areas that I don't know too much about. But this is what I'll say. I look at this crime again, financial predators, but compare them to homicidal predators as well as sexual predators. And their main goal is to gain control. And I measure control on a scale of 0 to 10, right? With 10 being the highest. So any of these predators, if they gain a control level of 8, 9, or 10, they have you. And it's going to be very, very tough to wrestle the control away from them. It's not possible, but it's very tough. And once they have that control level, especially these financial predators, they can wipe your entire life savings away. But let's take a look at homicidal predators, right? I mean, especially in 2, 3, 4 homicidal predators working together, right? They found each other. They have this common interest of doing evil, and they do it again and again together, kind of like a pack of wolves, right?
Yeah.
Why do they do it, right? I mean, what is it in their makeup? But it's just Predator 101.
Yeah, and you see this like some of the interesting cases are like the husband wife or the boyfriend girlfriend like murder.
Yeah,
like that where they team up and they feel that it's weird, but again, it's something that what are like the statistics around this in the country? Again, like some of those, when reading about it, there's certain things that come up where it's just like so eye-opening that you don't even realize, again, how big this issue is. And this is not something I've ever heard talked about. I love podcasts. I've never heard it talked about on a podcast. I've never heard about it like really on the news outside of a couple like credit card scam type things. But it sounds like it's a bigger problem than we realize.
Yeah, I think it is. So AARP just came out with a study this past June, actually June 15th, which is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, which is another subject. But they came out with a study saying that the annual cost of this is $28 billion.
$28 billion.
$28 billion.
And that's just in the United States.
Yeah. So, right, I mean, that amount of wealth just disappearing. And how much financial devastation is that to our nation's 58 million elders?
And did you say that's just with elder?
Yeah.
That's like, I'm trying to think of like companies that are that size. I mean, it's
a lot of money.
That's companies just evaporate, essentially the market cap of certain companies like just evaporating overnight, or over the course of the year.
No, absolutely.
And it's people's money, which is even.
Oh, it's people's life savings, right? I mean, and once it's gone, it's gone. I mean, individual in their mid 70s or 80s, and they all of a sudden, in a blink of an eye, within a week, lose their entire life savings. Now what?
Yeah.
And mental health.
Yeah.
What aspect of that's a huge aspect of elder financial abuse is the mental health part of it. Now, what do you do?
Yeah.
And take, for example, somebody who's a victim of a romance scheme. They're probably a victim because they've lost their loved one. Now they're alone. Well, now you're alone. Now you've lost your entire life savings. Now, what's that mental health picture look like?
Yeah.
It's horrible.
You're destroying somebody on I think about like money in general as being just a kind of like a software in our brain that we're consciously aware of it and we subconsciously feel it. When money's tight or something like that, like the gravity of the world is like a little bit heavier. And when you're doing all right and everything's all good, like you're able to walk around a little bit, a little bit looser. And for people to save up everything and then to just have it taken away. And especially, like you said, like there's that aspect of trust, and this is, and that's the part that like makes me just sad about it. Like that's the part that I didn't realize it was as much like people who knew you that are doing, and like you said about face to face, pastor, you're not only messing with their spiritual life, you're messing with their financial life, and you said, like you're saying, their mental life, their emotional life, and then I'm sure that has trickle down effects onto their physical life. And, in old age, that's, even more fragile.
Oh, 100%, right? So these are the effects, right? And today we have 58 million elders in our nation. How many of them are being affected? And I don't have the stats. I don't. There's been a lot of different studies, and I see a lot of different facts thrown out. So this is what I say to individuals. I say this is a low probability, high impact crime, meaning chances of this happening to you are low, but the chances aren't zero. And I tell the audiences that chances aren't zero. So you got to deal with this threat. You don't have to lose sleep over it, but just understand the threat. But I say it's a low probability crime. This is what I mean. I'll say that out of 100 people, one person will lose $50,000. Now, am I right? Am I wrong? I don't have the facts to back that up, but that's my starting point, right?
Yeah.
I need a starting point, and that's my starting point.
Yeah. And these, so what's the way that this is happening? What's the way, like when I was telling friends about it, I was like, and they said like, what is other financial abuse? I was like, I was reminded by my grandmother, who I mentioned like probably every episode here, but I love her so much. She's not with us anymore physically here on this earth, but she's always here in my heart. And she was, she was in her 90s, and her mind was incredibly sharp. Her body, she had not been able to walk for maybe 8 or 9 years or something like that. Like she'd, been just she would sleep in her chair, and she pretty much lived in her chair, but her mind was sharp. And she would have these scammers call her and ask for certain things. And she did two things. She'd pick up and say, if she recognized the number from before, she'd say, "Hey, this is the police department. Like I have your number," and she'd do that. And then she also, I was reminded of this last night when I was telling a friend, like she had a whistle that she would have on her, around her neck, and she would blow the whistle into the phone when these people would call her, just to like, they've got their headset on, or they've got, but that's the way a lot of it happens is over the phone. And then another thing, when she had a Facebook account, and one day I started getting friend requests from like her, like 7 other Facebook accounts. And I was like, well, grandma's not creating these Facebook accounts. Like she doesn't even know how to do that.
Right.
Who's doing this? And it has her picture, and it has like some of the other pictures of her granddaughter. It's just like, it's creepy. And also you find the right person. Like again, she had it. She was mentally there. She understood what was going on. But there's a lot of people where they're walking around physically fine, but they're mentally not there.
Yeah, 100%. So they do, right? Predator 101, the strong prey on the weak. So that's what these predators are doing. They're identifying individuals that they can gain control of and exploit. And they'll do that. They'll study you. They'll look at your social media. They'll target you based on what's out there on social media. They do their homework very well. And then they'll send you messages. And in one case, this romance scam, this individual met the predator online in a romance scam, and it seemed to be going well. And, the more the story went, what this predator knew is the individual's vulnerabilities. And the individual had dogs in her house. So the predator would start asking about the dogs. Oh, is that
Baxter?
Is that Baxter I hear barking? Oh, yes, it is, But the predator would find those things that were important to the victim and exploit that as well.
Yeah.
And then the victim just enjoyed talking about those subjects, and the predator knew that. Like, I mentioned, here in Philadelphia, football, the Eagles. Yeah, if somebody came up to me and started asking about, hey, what do you think about the Eagles game this weekend in the playoffs? Well, yeah, that's something that interests me. I'm going to speak about that, right? That's one of my genuine interests. And that's what these predators do. They'll find your genuine interest and then use those against you.
And be able to identify them. And that's, back to my point about using those talents for good or for bad. I've just recently, I've been focusing on this all year, but I just recently started working full time again. And I started, back into the sales world, and I'm laughing as I'm doing my job. I'm constantly, we're looking at people's profiles. We're finding out those exact things that you're saying. What's important to them? Where can I connect with them on a human level to get my, my foot in the door? Oh, we work, say we work with their alma mater or something like that.
Right.
I'm writing an email to relate to them, to hit them on that human level. You're doing the same thing. Like, that's why I'm very interested in the core of these people, because the core, the talent and the ability, and it sounds awful to call it that, but it is. They have a talent, which is to exploit people, and they're using it for good. And I hate to use the word exploit when you're talking about sales or trying to do something good, but like it's a similar mechanism. You're again, find what I can connect with, use that as my way in, and go from there. You can use it for good or bad. And I don't know. It's
So with that, right? If you can if you can connect with individuals, what you're trying to do is connect with individuals to do what? Gain influence. Because if you can gain influence, now you can gain control
And trust too.
trust. Yeah. So the trust will lead to the control. So now these predators realize that they've gained that control level. Again, on a scale of 0 to 10, an 8, 9, or 10. And once they think that they have a control level of 8, 9, or 10, then they'll start manipulating you.
Then they go in for the kill, essentially.
Yeah, they go in for the kill. Not sometimes it's very fast, sometimes it's not. Now these romance predators, they will move fast. They'll start talking about, hey, I want to advance our relationship. And in some cases, the victims will say, this is kind of weird, man. What are we advancing? We're good right now. This is comfortable. But the predator wants to speed it up, because if the predator can speed it up, now the predator can create confusion. And if the predator can create that confusion, now they gain more control on it.
Yeah, the distraction. And I'm thinking about those situations where you have older people, like my grandmother, she had lost her husband. I'd never met my grandpa Tony. So like she had spent so much time, and she lived in an in-law suite at my parents' house my entire life growing up. So I was able to have a very, close relationship with her. She was literally one of my best friends. But she had missed that aspect of her life, romance, and not that she ever talked about it, or not that ever, but again, like somebody in that situation was used to, like, built a life with somebody, had a family, had all these things, and then didn't experience that again. And for an older person to just experience that, especially through the world of the internet too. And that's something that with this, like, I'm sure just like everything else, it's evolved so much over time, just because, again, you're saying all of the things that you can find out through the internet, instead of, I'm sure 50 years ago, people were stalking people like this in person, but now you can essentially stalk somebody online, find out all these things about them, and, like you said, get your way in. But being able to do it online, I mean, you could be doing this. You could be manipulating people, 5 different people at once. You could be doing this too.
Oh, absolutely, right. And then think about the expertise that you're building too, right? I mean, these predators, after they've manipulated 50 people, then okay, now they start to understand what works and what doesn't. And that's what's scary too. But once these predators gain this control level, going back to romance scams and meeting individuals online. So let me say this, right here and now, that not everybody's a predator. If you can easily meet good people online. So what I would suggest to the elderly that's forming relationships online is ask this individual to do a video call with you and see him on video. And then if they agree to that, have a trusted, responsible friend or family member with you during this Zoom call or whatever call you're using. Now, if that individual appears, if they agree to it, okay, that's a sign that, okay, this may be on up and up. And then if you conduct that with the elderly there, with a trusted, responsible child with them, and just see it and feel it out and go slow, right? Slow it down. Don't let the predator speed it up. Then, okay, now you're increasing your chances of finding a good relationship, a good companionship, which is necessary. It really is.
Yeah. And I wonder if, like you were talking about, like the 1 in 100 somebody gets, when it's stolen from, like, I wonder if you take 100 online relationships, I would think, like, would it at this elderly level, like, are people really reaching out to each other to connect? Like, it's probably like 5% are real relationships and 95% scammers reaching out, I would assume, just because.
Yeah, right.
How many people at 85 are logging onto Facebook, clicking around, looking for a partner? Like, I just don't think that's happening.
That's right. And I don't know either, right? I don't know, but that's a great question. But there are individuals out there doing that. And some are successful, right? Not everybody's a predator, but there's other individuals that are meeting these individuals.
Yeah.
And the relationship will become accelerated. And then before you know it, now they're asking for money. And they've already gained that trust, right? That trust leads to control. And
so where do you think that this is going? Because you're talking about it in today's world, but with the again, it changed rapidly with the evolution of the internet, but now with AI, like one of the examples that come to mind for me is like the hostage situation where people will say, hey, I've got your grandson. He's here with me. And I need you to wire $50,000 to let him go. Like they used to be able to just say that, but now with AI and voice stuff, like they'll be able to literally capture somebody's voice, type up a script and make it sound like me and make it sound like I'm really there. And for older people, they hear that voice, they're not going to be able to decipher the two. And why would you be able to? Because it's shocking in general. But where do you think that this goes with that kind of stuff?
It only gets worse, right? It only gets worse. So this artificial intelligence is going to be a great tool for predators, and it's going to be effective, right? But at the same time, there's still things within these online scams that if you use a little bit of caution, slow things down, you're going to be able to defeat even these advanced tools like artificial intelligence. But this artificial intelligence is going to be very tough. So right now, 2024, we're at 58 million elders. We're going to be at 70 million elders by 2030, right? In the 6 short years, we're going to accelerate from 58 to 70. So it's only going to become more widespread, right?
Yeah.
So it's tough. And that's one of the key reasons why I want to set up the center that, hey, I think we're behind already because, right, nobody's really talking about elder financial abuse that much. There'll be a story here and a story there, but it's not being talked about as much as I would like for it to be, especially World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. That's June 15th. It was created by the United Nations back in either 2011 or 2012, but it's been around. Yet when I go around and talk to people, I go, have you ever heard of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day? They go, no. I go, well, how can we fight this if you're not even aware of an awareness day? So we're trying to increase the awareness.
So that's what so your main objective right now is to just, again, raising awareness. So you're doing a lot of different like speaking gigs and just trying to like, where are you speaking? How do you essentially get to these people? Because this is a different kind of medium. And I'll be able to see like the stats behind like how old people are when they're listening. It's like, mainly I think like 26 to 35 and 35 to 46 and stuff like that. But like a lot of, have you done anything like my grandma always used to watch like WHYY or something like that, like these old school channels? Like, is there any awareness on these, meeting these people where they are?
No, so I haven't been able to do any television interviews. I hope to in the future, but right now I'm based out of Haymarket, Virginia, near Manassas, Virginia, in Northern Virginia, and I'm currently operating within the state of Virginia. Now I have had opportunities to work with Westchester University out of Westchester, Pennsylvania, just down the road from us, as well as other areas as well. I've had chances to speak in Dallas, as well as Philadelphia, as well as Richmond. So we want to become a national footprint. We want to become the national leader in providing education on elder financial abuse. That's the vision. That's the goal. Now, do we accomplish that or not? I hope so, right? But right now, we're worried about building this correctly and getting the correct message out. And right now, primarily in Virginia.
Yeah. So doing a lot of just speaking about it, because it's to get like back to the meeting people where they are. How do you do it? How do you get into these things? Like I imagine like Facebook is a big thing for older people. And it's always surprising to me. It's always like, I was always shocked, but like my grandma spent a ton of time on Facebook, a ton of time. And she was always making me laugh. Like I said, she was with it, but she'd, at certain times she'd repost, she'd be like reading an article about Trump or something like that. And she would like repost it. And people would always be like she didn't know that she was reposting it, or she didn't know and she was always laughing. She's like, sometimes she'd repost some stuff and we'd call her like, Gramps, I think like we'd get somebody over there on her iPad or something like that. But, with how fast that stuff moves, like how do you even keep up? And now one of the things that I'm, and another scary part of where this stuff is going, another thing that I'm studying right now is like the AR, VR, the Apple Vision Pro headset is coming out February 2nd. Probably might even come out before we publish this episode, but like I was telling my friend, I was like, people don't realize what's going to happen. Like you're going to be able to like FaceTime video call. And instead of FaceTime, your body's going to be in their living room, you know? So they're going to like that system's going to scan your entire body. And essentially like a podcast wise, we could like record a podcast with 2 headsets on and physically look like we're in the same room. And so how are those kinds of things going to start manipulating people? You know, if they move, and again, this might be a 10 to 20 years down the road thing when these things become, instead of headsets, just glasses, or they talk about them being contacts. Like it's just scary where it's going to go. And it's also like, I think understanding where it's going to go can help people prevent or talk about it, raise that awareness before it happens.
Oh, absolutely, 100%, right? So technology is going to continue to evolve, of course. So it's essential that the elderly and their trusted and responsible family members understand the very fundamentals used by these predators, because the fundamentals of the predators will never go away. So if you understand that the main goal of any predator is to gain control, now you're much further ahead in understanding that. So I have another case that I share with audiences. ABC News did this a couple years ago, but the potential victim, her name was Granny Jean, right? And it was a grandparent scheme. And she gets a call and she says, we have your son, or grandson, he got into an auto accident. We need $8,000 immediately. Well, she knew that this was a scam, right? She detected the predator. And that's what we teach too. How you got to be able to detect a predator before they gain control. Well, she detected this as a predator, and I may get the story correct, but I think they said your grandson's been in a car wreck. Well, she knew that she only had a granddaughter that was at the age of driving, so she immediately identified it as a scam. Also, she was a retired 911 operator too. So as soon as she detected this individual as a predator, she became a predator and she started luring him in. So she played along and said, oh no, this is horrible. Hey, don't tell your mother. I'll take care of everything, right? So the predator says, can you Venmo me $8,000? So now she's become the predator. And she goes, well, I can't Venmo it to you, but I have $8,000 at my house if you want to come get it. And he goes, okay, yeah, sure. So what's happening? And then as soon as she does that, she hangs up, calls the local police that she retired from, and they send 2 officers over, and they're hiding behind her front door waiting for this guy. So let's look at what's happening here, right? The real predator, the individual making that telephone call, he thinks he has a control level of 8, 9, or 10. Yeah. Otherwise, he wouldn't approach the house, right? So he thinks he has control because he thinks he hasn't been detected. In actuality, he has been detected, and now Granny Jean has the control level. She's able to manipulate him onto the front porch. And as it plays out, he comes up, and Granny Jean just opens the door, hands him an envelope full of paper, and he just says, and it's all captured on the doorbell camera too, thank you very much. And then he turns, starts walking out, and that's when the police grab him and face plant him in the front yard. But that's predator. So I call that situation predator on predator, right?
Wow.
To where the first victim is just sitting at home, minding their own business, get a telephone call, and now immediately was able to recognize, now this is a predator, and then was able to manipulate the predator and then lead that individual into an ambush.
Wow. So that's crazy. You have to, like, that's part of, like you're saying, starting at the right point of understanding the predators from their point of view and getting inside of their minds. And that's something that, to how we met is one of the last episodes I did with Jim DiOrio, and we're talking about, the investigations that he was a part of, and talking about getting inside the mind of, he sat down with like different like terrorists, and one of the clips that we made of it was like him, and it was the introduction to the episode, was like him saying like, you got to connect with these people on a human level. You got to get to where they're at, and understand there's got to be something that you can connect with them about to get them to open up, and understanding the mindset of these people, and then kind of pushing back in the same way. That's impressive that lady was able to, again, probably with her, her experience, being aware of it. But
Yeah, exactly. And also, let me add to that. I don't recommend anyone do that.
Yeah.
This is what I recommend. If you're getting a phone call that sounds suspicious, hang up immediately, because the longer that you're on the call, the more intelligence that predator is able to gather. On
yeah,
you.
they're just
so
gathering.
It worked out this time, right? Good ending. But let me be clear, I do not recommend that.
Yeah. And how do you, I mean, like my grandma got so many of those calls. Like she would get those calls all day long. It's like, where are they, I guess like they're just finding this information, you know?
Anywhere in the world, right? Who knows where they're from, right?
Yeah.
So this is what a piece of advice that I tell individuals. If you're an elderly person or a loved one who's an elderly and they've had the same number for a number of years on this telephone, simply go and get a new telephone number. And now that's your trusted number, and you share that number with your inner circle, your trusted circle.
Yeah.
So right now you're cutting that attack vector, right? That's what we want to do. We want to eliminate attack vectors that these predators can use against a elderly person. Well, by changing that telephone number, all right, you've already eliminated attack vector, and you've hardened the target, right? This is what we're really trying to do. We want the elderly to harden the target, identify your own vulnerabilities, and do a vulnerability assessment, right? Because that's exactly what the predators do. So understand that. If you do your own vulnerability assessment, and then you can identify some of your vulnerabilities, like, well, I've had the same number for 20 years. Now you're hardened the target just a little bit, right? But that may be all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
And you'll never know, right? How do you measure if that was successful or not? Well, in prevention, you can't, right?
So much of this, as you talk about this, it brings me back to what you must have learned, obviously, through your life and service. And so just getting more into your background of West Point, class of 86.
Yep.
And that was the same as Jim?
Yeah, Jim and I were classmates. We never knew each other at school, and then Army together, and then FBI together. But our paths never crossed, either at West Point, Army, or FBI.
That's interesting. So what was your and I usually do more research, but I was excited to just ask you straight up here. But like, where did you start in the FBI? What was your what were your responsibilities? What was your day to day? I like asking about this kind of stuff because it's interesting. And one of the things Jim said, he's like, there's so much more paperwork. Like people think they see it on TV. It looks so cool. It looks so, but like there's a different, like what it's really like. So what was it really like being in the FBI?
Now, well, first of all, I enjoyed it. I was very fortunate to have the opportunity to serve 24 years. I'm extremely grateful for those 24 years to be able to serve in the FBI. And I worked alongside some of the most dedicated and talented individuals that I've ever seen. And it was such an honor to be working with these individuals. So I want to put that up front because I think that's very important. But with that, then I reported to Quantico for new agent training in December of 96, graduated April of 97, reported to the Washington field office, right, a major office, and spent my entire time in the D.C. area. And I was very fortunate with that. The first assignment I had was criminal work, and I really enjoyed doing that, the D.C. area, and then went on to national security. But the paperwork behind all of these investigations, it's immense, right? I mean, it's a lot of paperwork, but you got to do it correctly, right? And that's the professionalism behind the job, right? Is we all take a lot of pride in the products that we're producing, whether they're in, reports that will be used in further investigations or just applying for different techniques. The professionalism really comes in doing the day-to-day stuff correctly.
Yeah. So did you apply? Like, did you want to be in the FBI? Is this something that, like, how does this process? Because the way that I'm thinking about it is back to on the predator side of things. You find people that are vulnerable, and you brainwash them essentially.
Yeah.
You know, is that not what the intelligence communities do? And even in the army, you break people physically, and then you train them for good reason. For good reason. This is not a bad thing, but you wear people down, and then you instill your values and order, and way of thinking and all those kinds of things. Like it's a similar, again, in a good way.
Yeah.
But is there like, what was that like? I'm always interested in like what the training's like. Like, what are you doing to become an FBI agent?
Yeah. So I'll tell you that the FBI and training is very intense, but it's not nearly as intense as our first day at West Point. I listened to Jim's interview with you, and he mentioned the first day, we call it reception day, our day, July 1st, 1982, right? We'll never forget that. And Jim even talked about the parade, the first day, getting sworn in. So that's an indoctrination process, right? And that 4 years, West Point's trying to mold the way you think, your value system, right? You're here to serve. And then after 4 years, then you go on and you serve the country. And, that's the indoctrination. So what the FBI does is they're looking for individuals that most of the time already have a real world experience. In my case, I had 9 years military experience, but they're also looking for law enforcement officers. They're also looking for attorneys, CPAs, bankers, anyone who has this type of background. And then they bring you in with that background you already have, and then you use that background to fight crime. So that's what the FBI does when you get to Quantico.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear about the background of different people that serve it. And so like personally, were you undercover?
Yeah. So I won't get into any I won't get into any of that, but I'll tell you this, being at the Washington field office, I had the chance to do both the criminal work as well as national security work. And in the D.C. area, that was phenomenal work. So I really enjoyed that. But again, right, we're here in Philadelphia. They do incredible work here in the Philadelphia area, the New York area. So it's large office versus a small office. But even these small offices, you don't know what case is going to, no matter where you are in the FBI, you do not know what case is going to fall on your desk the next day. And that's what's really interesting with the FBI.
Yeah. So feel free that you don't have to say anything you don't want to get into, but like are you, when being undercover, are you like, hey, here's your assignment, here's who you are. Do you change your name? Do you change your like I assume occupation? I'm fascinated because it's so smart to do that. It's so, and like one of the guy we talked about, Andrew Bustamante, one of the CIA spies, he says like, you've probably come across one of these people in the grocery store that you just don't know it, that are undercover in one way or another. There's a lot of people that are doing this work, and it just makes you think like, why are people in certain, because I think about a lot of like corporations, you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
I'm sure that there's people out there, and it's, again, back to like the crypto world, that place, the entire industry is so, there's a lot of corruption because it's young. It's as an industry, it's ripe for being vulnerable as an industry. But it always fascinates me, the fact that this is the way that we do things, and it's like I said, it's smart, and thank God we do, because you're able to find certain things out. Like for example, I also worked in the music festival industry when I was through college, and I'll never forget being up in New York. These 3 undercover officers, I forget how we even found out that they were undercover, they told us, but they're there in plain clothes, and they're whether they're looking for drugs or looking for threats or looking for different things, like they looked just like everybody else.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So guess what we can speak about is the movie Donnie Brasco from years ago, right? And I guess I'm dating myself with that movie, but that was a fascinating movie on where Donnie Brasco is having to study the organized crime world that he's getting ready to enter, and then be able to survive in it, right? And, through our nation today, the individuals that are working narcotics or even human trafficking that are going undercover in some very dangerous groups, right, in order to conduct investigations that need to be worked. Hey, hats off to them. That's very, very tough. Work,
life-threatening.
Right? Yeah, it's life-threatening, right? And they take that responsibility. But, through our nation's history, especially in our nation's drug war, how many people have been undercover. fight that war. It's
Yeah.
we're very fortunate that we have people that are willing to do that. So,
Yeah. And again, in so many different areas, we talked briefly before we started recording about like the January 6th type of stuff. And I can't even mentally like get into that because it's so complex. Like who really knows, the storm that's around that. But there's so many situations where, again, it's a good thing that there's people undercover, but it's also, if they're undercover here, they undercover there. Like where my head's going is, I don't want to say a conspiracy theorist, but like, well, in certain levels of government, there's got to be some people undercover. China's got to be sending people over here to get into the weeds a little bit. What are the most, just from all of your experience, from the way that you're studying predators now, the West Point and FBI, what are some of the areas of concern that I like to say, like kind of like in the rat race, aren't conscious of? Like what are the things that are happening that you think people should be more aware of, including, this type of financial abuse?
That's a great question. I'll say that what we're seeing in the news today, all the different headlines that we're seeing today, pay attention to these headlines, because I think behind the headlines, there is an element of truth. Watch that and, be smart, especially with this artificial intelligence. Come to your own conclusions as where this may lead in the future, right? But it's scary, right? And of course, talking about national security, right? I mean, what are our threats to national security as we evolve, not only technology, but as well as other countries, right? So yeah, where will we be in 5-10 years, right? 9/11, right? We didn't see that coming, right?
Yeah.
But now that we saw it, what's the potential of another 9/11?
Yeah.
Either physical or cyber, right?
That's another thing, if you don't mind me asking, like I was 6 years old when 9/11 happened. So I didn't have like any conscious understanding what was going on. I always remember the memory that addition or the in-law suite was being built for my grandmother at that time. And I just remember the construction workers all being in my parents' family room, gathered around this TV, just watching, and like silence, just grown men in tears and silence. And that was one of those young memories where it's like, which parts of that memory are real? Which parts am I like, formulating together? But like, what was it like, it being in the FBI at that point, like, nations under attack, the reaction. I've studied a lot I've watched like as much, whether it be footage or interviews or things, but it's always just like, what was the experience? Where were you? What was your reaction? Like, did you call your wife? You know what I mean? Like what's happening in your head?
Yeah, no. So I'll tell you my little bit of my personal experience on that, right? I'm at Washington field office, and somebody said, yeah, a plane crashed into World Trade Towers. I was like, yeah, something's up with that. So I was going to a gathering of individuals, and I started thinking about this. I said, I'm going to excuse myself. I'm going to go back to our squad area, find a TV. So I'm watching the TV, and we see the second plane crash, and we're like, game on, right? This is real. Well, it turns out I had to leave the office. I was leaving the office in DC to travel to Northern Virginia. So as I'm on a major highway coming out of the DC area, I see the black smoke from what I think is the Pentagon. Now, I don't even associate that to what I just saw on TV because, right, it's impossible. You can't even believe that, right?
What?
Oh, yeah. So as I'm, and the road's kind of dog-legged, right? So I couldn't pinpoint where the smoke was coming from, but I was like, what is going on? So I turned on the radio to the local 24/7 news, and they're saying, hang on, breaking news, potential bomb went off at the Pentagon. And that's when I start shaking. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I'm driving right to it. And I've only been in the Bureau now 4 years. I'm like, this is unbelievable. And then I just went into react mode, got to the Pentagon probably 10, 15 minutes after it was hit, and then just kind of went from there.
Yeah. I think about this as being a traumatic experience, obviously, for the nation as a whole. Yeah. And what happens in traumatic experiences, like fight or flight, and fight, or also there's freeze. And I would imagine from my young memory, like a lot of the nation just froze. Yeah. Because it's like, what just like we're under attack. This is like, you just don't know what to, but you're trained to fight. You're trained to like, did you, and sorry, I didn't give you a heads up that I was going to be, I didn't know this is where we were going to go, but like, just interested in like what, like you said, you started to shake, but like in your head, what was that thought process? Was it immediately like, oh, this is like, did we know who we were under attack by? Like, did we know?
No, right. We didn't know anything, right? All I know is I see this black smoke coming from the Pentagon. And again, right, I served 9 years in the military. So when I got to DC with the FBI, I always looked at the Pentagon. Wow, we always held that in high esteem in the military. Wow, that's where our leadership is. So to see the black smoke coming from that, it's just, you can't believe your eyes, but you're like, dude, you got to believe this. This is happening. This is happening, and you're heading towards it now.
Yeah.
So accept reality. And again, right, slow down, gain control of yourself. Let's get there safely, and let's assess the situation, right? And then from there, very long 6 weeks after that.
Yeah.
But what I'll say to that, though, I saw the true professionalism of the FBI in that moment, as well as weeks after that, dealing with the situation and then the subsequent investigation.
Yeah. And I bring this up and pull on more strings to almost inform my own opinion and understanding of what you're doing today, because in my mind, you've trained this muscle of awareness for, again, predatory attacks, for like all of the experience. This is what I love to do about having the podcast in general, is like understanding who somebody is, where they came from, why they do what they do, and like how they got to be so good at it. Because I'm sure when you're seeing these cases in the financial abuse world, you're seeing things that have been informed by all of your life experience in the FBI, at West Point, and again, like when you approach that situation, you probably approach that situation different as somebody who had West Point experience and the FBI than somebody who's just in the FBI and didn't have the West Point experience. Because again, like you're saying, even thinking about the Pentagon, like you have a different mental makeup of that. And man, well, first, and also just thank you for your service. I mean,
thanks so much.
It's incredible that people do what you guys do. And like you said, like we talked about, you're putting your life on the line.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people, and that's something that, we get a little frustrated with the world that we live in today and social media, as we talked about, of like, people want to come after the cops and people want to come after the government and people wanted this and that. It's like popular now to do this.
Yeah. So I understand. I mean, talking a little bit about day-to-day life with the FBI. Let me share this. The day-to-day life of an FBI agent versus a street cop. I live in Prince William County, Virginia. So the county police officers, the Prince William County police officers, their day versus my day is completely different. They're facing potential threats almost on an hourly basis, right? In a patrol car. They don't know, right? I'm as an FBI agent sitting in my office, not knowing what case is going to hit my desk the next day. They don't know what person they're going to confront the next day, and they better be ready, right? So, but the whole point of that is a lot of my day was spent paperwork. A lot of their day is dealing with the public in a myriad of situations, right? Some are potentially violent, but others are just running through a burning door in order to rescue somebody, right? Yeah. But that's what they do, and hats off to them. So to our nation's law enforcement, I'll say, we're extremely lucky to have the individuals that we have doing the job.
Yeah, and that's and more about why I pull on certain things is because I think when you think about these things, what these people are really going through. Like, are you familiar with the this is one of my favorite songs, the Bruce Springsteen's 41 Shots. I think so, 41 Shots.
I'm not. No.
So it's a song about, there's this case in New York where this guy, they thought he was reaching for his gun. You know, they were chasing this guy. They thought he was a criminal. They thought he was reaching for his gun. He was reaching for his wallet.
Yes.
And I think 7 officers shot him 41 times, killed him. And it turned out that it wasn't, you know, but when the officers, like everyone, you know, piled on the officers that they were this, you know, oh, and there's a ton of situations today. You see the body cam footage and people are like, oh, well, like the officer should have done this. The officer should have done that. Okay, well, like, let's get inside their head a little bit and understand that they think that their life's threatened. They're trained automatically to do something, you know, to react a certain way, and having empathy for those people. Like, I don't think any of these officers that get into these situations wanted, you know, sure, there's some bad people, you know, again.
There always have been, always will be,
Yeah.
right? There's always that 1%, right?
Mm-hmm.
They always have been. So, but yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, in any profession. And it's just, I look at these things and sometimes that 1%, you know, they do the wrong thing and then it affects the 99% that are, again, putting their life on the line and doing the right thing at all times and trying, because there's also innocent mistakes, I think, in those situations where it's like, what do you do?
Yeah. So let's talk about that really quick. First of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share this. This is what I'll say. If a police officer commands you to show them your hands, I recommend you show them your hands, because if you do not comply with that command of show me your hands, now through their training, they're like, something may be up. Mm-hmm. So comply is all I'm saying. If you're dealing with an officer, make it easy for them. Comply. Yeah, here are my hands. Yep. Officer, I comply. What do you need? And then things will probably go very well. But it's when things start to evolve, and now that police officer has to make split-second decisions, right? Very rapidly.
Yeah.
And they're trained for it. But these are tough situations.
Yeah. And there's so many different, and that's another one with, because with that 41 Shots situation, like Malcolm Gladwell wrote I forget which book it was in, but he talked about that. And like again, understanding from the training that those officers went through, did something go wrong there? But also, again, the guy, I think he was, I'm not sure if he was black, brown, or something, you know, or a different race, but like they talked about that as well. And there's all these things that like, you have this internal bias. Like you can train as much as you want to, but you have this animalistic primal, I don't want to say it's a sense, but just a feeling. And Mark Cuban actually brings it up in a good way. He says, you know, if a guy is looking sketchy walking down the street with his hood up, I don't care if he's white, black, brown, whatever, you're going to walk to the other side of the street. You know, you sense a threat and you think you got to react.
Right. So why do we have that sense, right? Well, that's to protect ourselves, right? That's our survival sense that we all have. And so I'll take this back to elder financial abuse. Trust your gut, right? If someone just is giving you a bad vibe, slow down and assess it a little bit, right? But trust that vibe that you're getting, because that's a God-given instinct that we have to protect ourselves. It's
yeah. Do you think that as you get older, back to that, do you think that you lose that little bit of intuition? Do you think that I'm doing some reading right now on like childlike wonder. Like these kids just have this intuition. They have this sense that gets, as you learn more things, as you go through schooling, as you, again, get trained to think a certain way, you start to lose that wonder. You start to lose, and they call it like magic. Like it's a little bit of like, wait, why did that kid know that? Or why did, how are they so aware?
So this is how I'll approach that answer, because that's a very good question. So what I want to do is I want to educate the elderly and trusted and responsible family members. What I really want to train are individuals that are in their early, mid, late 60s, because it's easier to get the message across to them that this threat does exist. So if you take even minimal action to harden the target, you're helping yourself. Take that individual versus somebody who may be in their early 80s that have never had a predator attack happen to them. So, right, when I say that message, they're going to look at me and say, I'm 82 years old. I've never had anything happen that you're describing, so I'm good. This will never happen to me. So now they're living in that world of, no, the world's not as bad as you're trying to make it out to be. And those individuals are the ones that I worry most about, because when individuals say it won't happen to me, you're already placing yourself at a higher risk. Now, the correct answer is it probably won't happen to you, because I really feel that. But don't say it won't happen to you, because that's the 1 in 100.
Yeah. And that's a good point about the, people as they get older, because you start to lose that cognitive side, obviously, just with age, and getting to know that people, again, even talking about this, if there's somebody in their 60s or late 60s who's still, sharp, well, maybe hopefully they'll remember one piece of this conversation in 10 years, 15 years, or just have a conversation about it. Because like you said, like the first step is awareness.
Yeah.
And being, thinking that it is a possibility.
So is it far-fetched from us to say that this conversation right now may be heard by a 66-year-old, and this conversation may save their entire life savings 5 years from now, from one piece that we've mentioned on this podcast, that they apply 5 years from now, right? We'll never know, right? But I believe it will.
Yeah, the power of the internet. I talk a lot about the journey of doing what we're doing here. We've gotten to meet so many cool people, tell so many cool stories, and learn. It's just, I feel like I'm back at school. Like, this to me is like real world education, and a really cool experience happened last night. I was listening to, we had my friend Julian Dory on a couple episodes ago, and he recently sat down with this kid in high school. His name's George P. And he runs this podcast. It's called like George P Studios. And they recorded a podcast together. And I was listening, and I've never met George. Like, we follow each other on Instagram now, and I'm a fan of what he's doing. He's a high school kid doing this. I'm like, you're a beast.
Yeah.
But he said, like, he mentioned that, like, oh yeah, I was listening to your conversation on the People Talking Sitting Down podcast. And I just, like, this thing went off in my head. I was like, oh my God, like, every time it happens when people are listening, like, he processed the conversation that Julie and I had, felt things about it, and thought about it. And like, that is the coolest. Like, we talk about the tough side of technology. There's also the way that we can get this information out there that's not talked about enough. And like, just the fact that people do listen, thank you to everybody. And also, it only takes one. You just need one little nugget to stick with somebody, to maybe start a conversation at Thanksgiving next year or something like that, or over the holidays, like whatever it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is what I wanted individuals to do is come up. People say, well, what should we do to protect ourselves? Well, I don't know personal situations. So just go back to the fundamentals. What I want individuals to do, conduct that self-assessment, that vulnerability self-assessment on yourself or a loved one, and then come up with a plan to harden the target. But what I want them to do, I want them to do that twice a year. So go to your calendar right now, on your birthday and maybe 6 months after your birthday, spend 1 hour either looking at my website or studying anything else on elder financial abuse, just to educate yourself. It's your own educational program is what I'm advocating for.
Yeah.
When it's a cost of what? 2 hours a year? 2 hours a year may save your entire life savings. That's the message that we're trying to get. But if you do that, you're going to learn the predator fundamentals. Maybe you'll come across one article that's been written in a newspaper or a national magazine that explains the situation. Now you have a little bit more information. And with that little bit of information, that can go a long ways. So I'll share that with educating the audiences. And one case that I have, it was actually a homicidal predator that ended up going well. But the story was on NBC News. It's a young girl in Florida at a bus stop, and the predator shows up. An individual, I believe he is in his 30s, but the girl is all by herself at a truck stop, and it's actually captured on a home camera from just a couple of homes away. But he gets out with a knife and comes running to her. And you can see this on the video. So here's the 1 in 100, right? Or 1 in a million in this case. But this is an 11-year-old girl, and she sees the predator running at him with the knife. And this is just a couple years ago in Florida. So she tries to flee. The predator grabs her, right? So I'm looking at this through my predator model. All right, he has control of her, and she's only 11. So he tries to carry her, drops her, and then decides to give up, and then lets go, runs away. But here's the thing. Here's the education. She was playing with a blue slime. So out of nowhere, right, here comes a predator with a knife, grabs her, and she had the ability to reason, hey, I have blue slime. I'm going to smear it on his arm to mark him.
No way.
Oh, absolutely. Police catch him just a couple hours later. What does he have on his arm? Blue slime.
Wow.
So where did she learn that from? She learned it from the NBC show SVU. She watches it with her mother. So watching that show with her mother gave her enough education that in this 1 in a million occurrence, to check the probability of this ever happening. But she's dealing with a predator with a knife, and she had enough training to say, no, blue slime, arm. And that led to his arrest.
That's fascinating. That's something, yeah.
Studying predators, and as well as, a little bit of education goes a long ways.
That's something that I think about, the way that, like, all the things that you're told when you're growing up, and what things are good, what things are bad, net good and net bad. Because when we were younger, the amount of fear that was instilled, as far as, just, I can only speak from my personal experience.
Yeah, sure.
It felt like a general experience for young kids, but like, the fear of being kidnapped as a kid was so present. And so, like, I remember getting off the bus, and like, if a car drove a certain way or something like that, like running or something like that, like the actual percentage chance that it happens. Like, I wonder if the net effect of the fear instilled is a negative over the amount of times that this actually happens. Because where I'm trying to get to with this is, like, you're trained to not trust strangers as a child. Right. Strangers are bad.
Right.
And what is, like, the 20-year effect now on that is that we don't trust each other as people. We don't, like, there's so much fear from how people are operating in this world. And like, I always talk about the neighbor examples. Like, when you were, I'm sure when you had, you were growing up, everyone on the block knew each other. Everyone on the block talked to each other. That doesn't happen anymore. That's not, the kids grow up, they don't, like, play outside as much. You don't know your neighbors. You don't know that tight-knit community. I know my one neighbor here, and I live in a building with a ton of people. Like,
yeah,
I wonder if that, again, there's good and bad from both sides. There's good, the level of awareness that kids have, like, if that 1 in a million thing happens. But I wonder if the 999,999, the fear being instilled of them is like a negative thing over the course of time.
That's a great point. And I don't know, but I'll say this. I think it's probably healthy in the long run, because as you grow older and now you become a teenager and now you move off and you go to college, some of those principles that you were taught to you about beware of predators, right?
Yeah.
Now that's helpful when you leave home and then you start your first jobs and you move from Arkansas to Washington, D.C. Okay, now you can put it more in context and say, okay, I'm generally safe here, but there are people out here who do want to harm me and have no qualms about doing it too. They'll get a thrill out of harming me. So just having that knowledge, you're still able to move through large city, enjoy it, right? Go to sporting events, but you're a little bit more aware. And that's the key.
Yeah.
A little bit of awareness.
Yeah. And again, like, on the third level effect of that is, like, is fear always a bad thing? Is fear, maybe you should attack fear. And that's something that we kind of talked briefly about, like, my fear of putting things out there on the internet. Like, since facing it head on, it's helped, like making yourself uncomfortable is, like, a good thing in a lot of ways. Attack, again, fear. Like, I try to learn from these whether it be negative life experiences or these kinds of stories where it's like just the awareness is a good thing. You got to have a little bit of fear.
Yeah, you do. And right, I mean, so what I do in my training, right, is I want to instill a little bit of fear, but the threat is real.
Mm-hmm.
And if you understand that threat, you're going to have a little bit of fear about it, which is good. Now, I don't want people staying up, can't sleep at night because of this, because I don't think that warrants that amount of fear. Not even close, right? But just understand, as you become elderly, yeah, a lot of people, 99% of the people are there to help you. They see that you need help and they're willing to help you. But that 1%, they're the ones that are targeting you.
Yeah. And I would also assume at that age, it is the biggest threat.
Yeah.
And it is, because what I would assume that kind of harm is more prevalent or more likely than like physical harm of elderly people. This kind of, again, starting with financial, but then that it ties a psychological component into it. And it's such a shame. I hate that it's even a thing. I hate that that's,
Right. For some individuals, it'll take that elderly person to a very dark place, right? And that's real.
Yeah.
And want to just touch on that really quick. It will take some individuals to a dark place. So that's why this whole awareness and being proactive can maybe prevent some of that.
That's actually another thing that shocked me in my research about mental health and looking at all the suicide statistics. The amount of, like, one of the groups that aren't talked about in the suicide conversation, not that the suicide conversations had enough or really at all publicly, because it's such a dark topic that people just don't want to talk about it. But like the 80 to 90 and like the 70 to 80, their rate of suicide, especially males. So just in general, some of the statistics is that 4 out of every 5 suicide, not attempts, but 4 out of 5 people who die by suicide are male. And that always shocks people.
Yeah.
Because people don't talk. This is men's mental health thing. We don't talk about it. And these are the things that, especially with older people, they don't. And I don't know enough about why that is. I would imagine loneliness, sadness, male, purpose in life and things like that. But it's, again, it happens. It's real.
Yeah, it's real. I got to say, I applaud the U.S. Senate Special Committee on Aging. They brought in a individual to testify before them a couple of years ago. And if I remember the story correctly, it was the grandparent, or it was the grandchild of an elderly person who committed suicide after losing their entire life savings. So thank you for hearing that story and bringing that to life. But yeah, that's part of elder financial abuse. I don't delve on it too much, but yeah, that's another tough
It's like what
part.
happens to these people after,
Yeah,
It's like,
what do you do, right? I mean, but that's the financial devastation. That's the emotional devastation. So there's a story on CBS News from October. An individual living in Arlington, Virginia, he lost his entire life savings to a tech support scam, and he lost it over a couple months. There's another individual in Florida, West Palm Beach, last year, about March or April. He was also a victim of a tech support scheme. So let me go. So this tech support scam, I'm glad I'm mentioning this because this is what frightens me very much too. But the one in West Palm Beach, this individual lost their entire life savings within a week. Now what do you do? So, right, I mean, week before having a great retirement, life is good, right? Minimal problems. That one predator gained that level of control within a week. The entire life savings.
and so that's like tech. How does that, like, where does that start? Tech support scam, like,
Tech support scam. So this individual, how he described it in West Palm Beach, is that he saw a charge on his credit card. So he looked it up, called the number, and now he's talking to the predator. So he got in touch with the predator, and the predator said, yeah, no, you have this service. So let's take a look at your computer right now. very convincing, a very,
Yeah.
very well-trained predator. And the individual gave control of his laptop, remotely gave control of his laptop. And the individual on the other end of the line said, "Oh no, yeah. Hey, I see your computer's has 5 different threats going on right now. So we need to take actions." And then took the actions. And as it turns out, within a week, his money was gone. "Oh yeah, you need to remove all your money out of your banking account because it's been compromised. And we're here now. We can set up a safe account for you."
Yeah.
And within 1 week, that predator had that a control level of 8, 9, or 10 to convince this individual that the computer had been infected.
Yeah. And it's so like, that's another thing I've been thinking about more and learning is that like the level of privacy that you actually have, if you can find somebody's, like you can find access to this information. Like I was doing something, we were talking about cryptocurrency. I was doing something where I was like, oh, like I needed, I don't know, should I even really say this, but like just taking a picture of your ID. Like a lot of times you have to upload your ID on the internet and stuff where you got to take a picture. Well, when somebody hacks your phone and gets that information, they've got all they need to get access to these accounts, and they can set up their own, there's all that like 2-factor authentication and stuff now, but you get certain keys to somebody's life. Like,
and what do those keys give you? Control, right?
Yeah.
So if a predator is able to obtain those keys, now they have that level of control.
Yeah. And now it's I briefly touched on the stuff earlier with the AR, VR, but like Apple, I've always been obsessed with Apple and Steve Jobs, and just like, they're fascinating to me as a company. The products are obviously like the most simple and beautiful products that like have ever been like really engineered in the world. I mean, Tesla now is probably like kind of on the same level of like beauty and simplicity. But I remember listening to, when I was in high school, I think it was when like the Touch ID came out, and I was like, that's so cool. Like, that's so cool. I mean, you see in like FBI shows or stuff like, oh, they scan their face, I'm like, oh, we're going to get that on our phone now. That's so awesome. And then a couple of years later, Apple's like, oh, it's going to be safer instead of your fingerprint to have your face scanned and Face ID. So now they've got all that data on your phone. And now with that Apple Vision Pro thing coming out, oh, well, it's safer to have your iris scanned instead of your face. And now they've got all that data. And it's like, those are going to be the keys moving forward, and how people are going to, again, manipulate those things. I mean, it's like, hey, like, where does it go? Where does it stop?
I agree with that, right? I mean, technology, and it's going to be evolved, but at the same time, some of these attacks are going to be very simple. And one thing that I want to share with your audience, another tip, all right, just like changing your telephone number, another tip is this. If somebody does gain control of your computer, now they're speaking to you through your computer. Hey, this is Microsoft. We want to alert you that your computer's been hacked. This is what I've seen in some cases. These predators will say, the first step we need to do is verify that we are talking to John Schwartz. So, John, if you can, pull out your driver's license and hold it up to the camera on your laptop just so we can verify who you are. Bam. That's the attack, right? So if anyone listening, if somebody asks you to show your ID and put it up to the camera, that's probably a predator attack.
Yeah. And isn't there also like when they do that on the phone too, of saying like, we'll repeat your name.
Yeah.
And they have you repeat that, to, again, maybe gain access to another area. I was talking about going back to work. Like I had to upload like my passport, again, for like verifying my identity reasons and getting paid and whatnot. And like, that makes sense. But I like saw the other day, I was like, wait, that's like still on my computer. That's not good. Like, I don't want that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So, right. So now you're thinking correctly, right? Oh, is that still on my computer? Should it be on my computer? Right. So that's a great thought process. And you probably removed it, but now you're thinking, right. You're hardening the target. You're thinking, what actions can I take to potentially protect myself? And
it's funny you say that, because I actually had to do that exact thing.
Yeah.
With working, was I had to hold my passport up to the the guy on the other side and say, and he's in HR, and it's just like, it makes you think, but it also, because yes, it's good. You got to do it for work. It is what it is, whatever. You're giving up some level of privacy. And that's another thing that I would like to talk about too, is back to data, because it in order to get to these people, you need their data, and data privacy is something that is very top of mind for me, because I'm going back to work. I'm selling. Every time I call somebody, it's recorded. And that's for like sales software to be able to input certain things, transcripts. Okay, let's review the call. What would you do right? What'd you do wrong? That's great.
Yep.
That's great.
Sure.
But when I leave the company, 5-10 years or something like that, they own that data. They own everything that I do, and they own everything that I say. Every single thing can be recorded. And I think that that's something that, again, people don't talk about, people don't, consider or think about, but it personally makes me a little uncomfortable. But it's the trade-off of,
That's the world that we live in today, right? I mean, for the criminals now, as the criminals are out there conducting, especially violent activity, they're a little bit more apprehensive, because they know if they get into, or even if two people get into a fight on a street, at a sporting event, they've had something drinking, now they get into fights, you got to know that there's going to be 100 cameras filming that, right? And that's in back of everybody's mind. Oh, maybe this guy just called me a bad name because of the jersey I'm wearing, but I don't need to start anything and then be on the 6 o'clock news with 100 different photos of me. So
yeah, and I
it's
wonder
the
where all
world we
that,
live in, right?
It is, and I wonder where all that goes. One of the things I've learned is that like kids today are becoming consciously aware much earlier, because they're able to see themselves in these phone screens. They're playing with mom's phone, they open up the camera, they can see themselves.
Yeah.
So their awareness of, oh, I'm like a being in this, they're, instead of just living through the head going out, they're now seeing their reflection. They're seeing this. So they're starting to think earlier. Puberty is literally happening earlier because of these things, because they're growing quicker. They're growing, whether they're physically and also mentally, their awareness is growing quicker. And one of the things that makes me uncomfortable is like, again, kids, they're filmed constantly. And I get it. Like, moms think their kids are cute and they want to post their pictures and everything, but it's like they're growing up and they're filmed all the time.
Yeah.
Nonstop. And it's just like, where does that go? What does that do to them in 20 years? I'm talking about remembering how I was, like we had this fear. Well, I'm just glad at least like I wasn't filmed the entire childhood. But now these kids, whether it's computers in schools, there's, it's, again, like you said, it's the world we live in.
Yeah, technology today, right? And it's only going to advance. Yeah, it's interesting. It really, really is.
Yeah.
People Talking Sim Down podcast, episode 17, coffee ad, take 1.
Guys, thank you so much for checking out this episode with John Schwartz. Thank you to John for coming through to do it. Had an unbelievable time. And hey, this episode is brought to you by Drip Coffee. We partner with Drip Coffee, it's a local coffee company down here in Philadelphia. Great guys over there, Blaze and Sal. Thank you so much for partnering with us on this bag. To support Drip Coffee, to support the podcast, please go check out the link in the description. These sweatshirts, unbelievable. These hats, Be the Tide. It's good stuff. So check out the Drip Coffee website. Grab some gear, grab a coffee, grab a cup, grab a friend, whatever you want to do. But guys, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Be the Tide. Later. Love you. But I was saying in the break that I wanted to get into these other areas that I'm just interested in from your perspective. And one of those that we talked about was fatherhood. What's it like being a father? And I've said on this podcast a couple of times of like, it's been very top of mind for me lately, thinking about, I'm now going through situations where as I mentioned, my buddy Tommy in the first episode, having children. I've got friends that are starting to get engaged and get onto that next step of life. And it feels so real. And, one of the things that we talked about, like, it's a silly question, but just purely, what's it like being a father, and what's it like becoming a father?
So, one word, joy. And it really is. So been a parent for 26 years. I can tell you then in those 26 years, nothing but joy. A lot of work, a lot of frustration, a lot of anger too, right? Because it's human relationships. But at the end of the day, it's all joy. And then from the early days to now, where all my children are young adults, and now they're finding their way and they're finding who they are. Yeah, and you see that they're realizing the talents that they have, and that's the biggest joy. But no, it was fantastic. It was fantastic having our first child, and like I already shared with you, as soon as you see your child, as soon as they're born, your entire world changes, and you realize this is why I'm here. I'm here to take care of this young baby now. And who is this little baby? Who will you end up being? What will you grow into? And hey, it's phenomenal. It's beyond magical. It really is. It's powerful. It knocks you off your feet.
I was gonna say, I'm like nothing but smiles over here because just the pure excitement and the reality of it. Like, one of the things, like, what did you learn about yourself as a man when that happened? What did you when I've heard other people talk about, again, like you just said, like your worldview changes in a second. And when does that happen? And what is that like? What is your immediate, like the same kind of, like we were talking about earlier, with the 9/11 type stuff? Like where was your head at? Where was your emotions? Like what was that first day, that first week, that first, like what?
Man. So yeah, the first day. So you're right. Our first was daughter, and just the immense pride. Oh, I have a. You keep saying it to yourself. I have a daughter. I'm going to go see my daughter. It's amazing. But as a man, right? I mean, it depends on. So I have 2 daughters and a son, right? So it makes me look at myself as a man, whether I'm dealing with my daughter or my son, right? It brings out more of who I am dealing with either my daughter or my son. With my daughters, right, I want to impart on them, I'm going to treat you like the princess you are. And one of the reasons I'm going to do that is because I want you to know that I want to teach you that every man should be treating you this way, so that when you meet the guys that don't treat you to the standard I treat you, you don't put up with it. And then with my son, right, I mean, hey, this is, we're both men, this is how I view the world. And, what are your thoughts on that? And I'll get his feedback on it. And I learn from his feedback. It's like, oh no, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's okay. Before we started recording, you were talking about, your son's interest in music and letting you know, or just telling you kind of like, here's what's really cool about this song. And it's not the type of music that you would naturally listen to, but like what's something that your kids have taught you, or challenged you on, or pushed you to again, experience something different about the world, to learn, like to change your view?
No, especially my son, because he's very artistic. He really enjoys movies as well as music. So he'll make me look at even movies differently. And the music that he listens to, when he shows me his different artists, this is something I would have never found before, but I'm like, I see the genius in this. Yes. Yeah. It's amazing. The movie 2001 Space Odyssey. I'd seen it before, but I was like, I don't get it, whatever. But I watched it with him. He explains the whole thing. And I'm like, this thing's brilliant.
Yeah.
But I needed him to explain it to me through what he was seeing, right? And I'm like, you see all this in this movie. He goes, oh, yeah, it's obvious, isn't it? I go, maybe it is, but I missed it all.
Yeah.
But you see the world through his eyes. Yeah, it's amazing. And with the other children as well.
Yeah. Isn't that so cool? Like I was saying, me reflecting, I am a collection of, we talk about nature versus nurture, but like, from point A, from minute one, I'm a collection of my parents.
Yeah.
Part of my father, part of my mother, the good, the bad, the ugly. And as I've reflected more on that, I've become so much more interested in them and their stories of, again, how they think about these things, how they reflect on how they've changed. Because as you said, you change over time, and then who you are today is so different from who you are 1 minute before your daughter was born, and also them as under 10, and then leaving through those 10 through 20.
Yeah, just a thought that came into my head. Yeah, you're right. Those stages, when they're small children now, teenage, but it really hits you when they're going to college. Oh, yeah, I'll get emotional on that.
Oh, what?
When they're, yeah, that's tough.
It's
when they leave.
Well,
and I'm getting emotional. But yeah, when they leave, man. Yeah, but it makes you thankful.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's your thought process in those moments? It's another one of those big critical periods of your life and theirs, is filled with so much potential.
Yeah, it's a lot of joy. And the becoming emotional is me being selfish, but the joy of seeing them going off onto. Because, know what college means to them, that this is large part of who you're going to become, and the people that you're going to meet will shape and form your lives from here on. And so there's a lot of excitement with that. And you see them blossom into that freshman year, right? Okay, yeah, typical freshman, until a senior year. And now they are seeing the world, and they are connecting, and they see where they want to be in the world, and you hear their dreams of how they want to help people in the future, and it's beyond beautiful.
Yeah,
that stuff.
It's
a miracle, and it's a blessing. It really is a miracle. It's a miracle that you're forever thankful for.
Yeah. Is there any those moments? Think of, like, you're now bringing things up for me about like when I only went to college a couple hours away, but like when my parents would come, and mentioned playing lacrosse, like when they'd be there for games, it's like home came down to college, and it's that feeling of, and like, of course there's excitement, there's joy, there's, not because you do want to get away from your parents. I'm sure when you went to college too.
Sure. Oh yeah.
There's a level of that, but there's also then, and it's something like as I'm getting older, you swing back, and it's like, wait, there's actually a really cool this guy named Tim Urban. He writes a blog called Wait But Why, and he wrote this really impactful blog. I'll try to link it in the comments or the description. But the way he writes his blog, he maps it out with a lot of cool visualizations. And with this one, he said, if you take, and he had like your life experiences with your parents, by the time that you're 18 years old, like 99% of the time you're spending with your parents is gone. And you only have 1% left. And like, how many more times are you going to be able to see them?
That's what hit me just now when I started getting emotional, because I realized that. Yeah, it's hit me again.
Yeah.
You realize, wow, a lot of that time's gone.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the joy continues, and you see them become young adults and who they're meant to be. And the best thing is when they see their own strengths and they're amazed by it, but they realize it and they get it. That's the best part. That's the best part.
Just thinking about, again, you being emotional there, there's a cool part of that. That's those 1%, that 1% left. How much more valuable is that now? Each one of those moments, each Christmas, each holiday, each birthday, there's an increased level of, because we take it for granted, Yeah. I'm sure one of the cool things you said in the break was that you saw a dad walk in to a grocery store with his 2 young daughters, and you said he's the richest man in town. And that was such a cool, but maybe that guy's stressed about work, and maybe he's not thinking about it.
Yeah, no, 100%, because I remember being that young father, and I wish I had focused more on what I had there at the moment when I would take my small children just to the grocery store and they're excited, they're singing songs or whatever, and just to be able to enjoy it. But right, I mean, you're at that stage of life where you have competing responsibilities, right? And yeah, that's natural.
Yeah. And that's another, again, being able to do this all year and being able to focus on just this has been such a gift. And I was really grateful for it, appreciative. I try to be in the moment. But now that I've gone back to work 9 to 5, I'm like, how do people do this? How do people like, I'm just trying to juggle a couple things right now. But then you add kids into the mix. Yeah. 3 kids, and then you've got the financial responsibilities. We have to make money. You have to work harder. Yeah. You have to be able to provide. You have to be able to support. But you also want to be present, and those things, like you said, compete.
Yeah, they do. They really do. And right, so once you have the children, and now you have the competing responsibilities are in full gear. Everybody wonders, well, how can I manage this? But you find a way, and it's actually beautiful. But in those moments, you just do the best you can, and slow down, enjoy. And whenever my small kids would ever come to me and maybe I've had a stressful day and I just want to be left alone, but now here comes my daughter with a book. Can I show you my new book? I was smart enough to say, dude, this is a great opportunity. Could be the best part of your day. Show me that book, and it would always be.
Yeah,
I'm always thankful. I'm always thankful that I never just leave your father alone really quick. No.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's I'm going to ask you some direct questions. What are you most proud of as a father? What are you most proud when you look at your kids? What is something that you see in them, or maybe you see them interact with somebody else, and how are you able to look back and say, hey, we did a good job?
That's a great question. I would say when I see them being compassionate and caring to somebody else, that's when you're most proud. Oh yeah. When you see them and they don't have to help this other person or take care of this person, but they are, and this other person needs them, and my children see that, hey, this person's really having a tough time and help. Yeah, that's when you're most proud.
Yeah. So we'll transition from that side to like what's the hardest part, the most difficult part, and difficult stage. I think that's another, like the age range. What's the most difficult way? You're really testing my patience here.
Yeah. So they always do. They always test your patience, man. It's like, come on, man. Are you serious? We're going to do this now, right? But that's been at every stage. So, and I always thought that I would be able to answer that question. No, well, yeah, when they were in middle school, that was the toughest stage. No, I can't pinpoint the toughest stage, because each stage brings its own challenges, but also its own beauty too. So even now, right? I mean, I don't interact with them as much because, they're adults now. But with that, the challenges are still there, but also the beauty. So this stage, it's hard for me to say that this stage is better than the stage when they were in teenagers or even in middle school. Each stage is different, and it brings a different joy.
Yeah.
Maybe that sounds like I'm walking the fence and not really answering the question, but I really mean that.
Yeah. That's good. That's cool. Do you have any grandchildren?
No. Yeah, I haven't. So I see all my friends entering into becoming grandparents, and they say how wonderful it is. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm sure it is. And that's the same with parenthood too. Before we had kids, people would say, "Oh, you can't wait till you have kids. Oh, it's going to be wonderful." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure it will, but you just can't comprehend it." So I think that's the same with grandchildren. I just can't comprehend it yet.
Yeah.
Until you see I'm sure when I see my first grandchild, I'm like, "Oh, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," and then I'll sound like all my friends.
Yeah.
Which will be beautiful.
That's cool. There. Max and I were talking earlier about like just new experiences and just how much that shapes you as a person. Last week we had Scott Ruth in here, who's a singer-songwriter out of Nashville, and he his wife is due. They're pregnant. Like, and he was talking about how much, like we talked about how much it's going to affect his art, his songwriting. It's going to change his, like you're just saying, like there's going to be this huge impact of how that changes. And, having new experiences in life. And that's one thing I love doing this. I enjoy it. The fact that we can even do it, thanks to Max, really, to be able to actually get it out there. But every week, every time I'm talking to somebody, I'm having a new experience, and I'm being shaped by the conversations that I'm having. And where this leads me to in my head is your next 20 years of life. What are some experiences that you're either looking forward to, or, if I'm putting you on the spot, what's one thing that you want to do to challenge yourself to have a new experience and grow?
No, I mean, that's a great experience, or that's a great question. So, it really is an interesting stage. When I retired from the FBI, that was completely another chapter done. And there's a little sadness with that. I'm like, wow, that did go by very quickly. And then I look at, okay, so I'm starting this center, I'm starting this nonprofit. What will this bring in the next 10 years, 20 years? I know the potential, I know what it could be, but I'm just waiting for it to unfold. So, right, I mean, here we are, brand new year, January 2024. So for the next 20 years, what I want to do is be able to look at each year singularly. What is this year going to bring? And going back to the children, right? They're at a point now, there's a possibility they're going to meet somebody who's the significant other. And now that's going to affect my life personally, my marriage, right, with my wife, and then the rest of our family. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Who's going to enter into our family next?
Yeah.
And then who's going to bring the grandchildren, right? It's all that's ahead of us. And I don't have a clue, right? I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
May get the call today, tomorrow. Hey, I met someone. Because I remember, when I met my wife, I had quick story. So I was in the Army. I just received orders to go to Korea. And I go to a roommate's wedding, and guess who I meet, right? So I'm like, hey, I wasn't looking to meet anybody because I have orders for Korea, but that's the way life happens, right?
Yeah.
So I know in the next 20 years, I know that's how life's going to work. One day we're going to get a call, from one of our kids, met somebody. And I go, yeah, I know how that works.
Did you know when you met your wife?
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, you do. And right. You always hear that, people, well, how did you know? I'm going, dude, it's magic. I don't know. We just looked at each other. The first time we looked at each other, I was like, man, that was different.
Yeah.
And now, here we are.
As it was top of mind for me, and I didn't want to interrupt as we were talking about, your children and being a father. But the biggest part of that equation as a father is being a husband,
Yeah.
and what that does. And over time, like that's another thing, like as I was talking about juggling a couple different things right now, it's like, not only are you having a child, but the person that you're able to give most of your love and attention to now splits in a way. And these are things that I'm trying to think about, because I want to be a great father. I want to be a great husband. How do I do that? And how do you, because you can't let it split. You just got to create more in my head. It's just like, how do you, taking care of, being a good husband is being a good father. It's setting that example.
Oh, yeah.
Being a good father is being a good husband. It's taking care of your children. And just thinking about all the more I learn, the more people I talk to, I'm fascinated. Everybody does it. But like you said, you figure out a way.
Yeah. I mean, you figure out a way, but more importantly, it really just comes naturally. I mean, as soon as I saw my wife and I was like, there's something different here, it just evolves. It happens. So the smartest thing to do, just sit back and just enjoy the ride, because the ride's going to happen. The magic's going to happen along the path. Just know that the magic's going to happen and just wait for it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's so hard to do when it's so hard for me to say that, at the stage that I'm at now, because if I was telling that to my younger self that had just met my wife, I wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah, it's just to know how much people, either grow over time, the things that they learn, the things that they do. It's such a fascinating. And again, back to the medium of like podcasts in general. It's like when we have these conversations, the way that I listen to podcasts, and the way that I think a lot of people process podcasts is that they're thinking about all of these things that we're talking about, but they're thinking about how it relates to them. And whether they're, maybe somebody who's just become a father or just become a husband relates to that differently.
Right.
And maybe there's a spark that is like a reminder. It's like, wait, I'm in the good times. And I love that quote from The Office TV show of Ed Helms saying, what was it? Like, you wish you realized you were in the good times before they were gone, or something like that. Like, it's, you don't know it when you're in it sometimes.
Yeah.
But you need those reminders.
I mean, just enjoy the journey, right? I mean, when I set this nonprofit up, and then you and I met, right? And now here I am today, and right, this is fun, this is joyful. Just let the magic happen.
Yeah.
Sit back, and it's tough.
Yeah, and and that's the fun thing. You don't even know where. I usually do this in the beginning, but I'm glad we got into the meat of the topic today quickly. But like, you just commented on the episode that I did with Jim. And I literally just saw your LinkedIn picture. I was like, wow, this guy's serious, so, and I'm like, that's so cool that I clicked into your profile. I was like, that's so cool that this guy listened. And then I just reached out to you saying like, hey, would love to chat. Your background looks cool. And then we, like I did with Jim, we just, met on FaceTime, and when you ask people and when you meet people, of course it's, it's best in person when you get to meet people, but you can learn so much. And there's the good side of the internet. We never would have gotten connected if it weren't for that.
Oh, absolutely. So talking about the magic, right? I shared with you earlier, here we are in downtown Philadelphia. Just a couple of months ago, I was just a couple of blocks away from here at a conference, right?
Yeah.
I had no idea I would be back here in just a couple of months doing this podcast with you, but it's magical.
Yeah.
So
I can't
let
wait
the magic happen, man. Just sit back.
And I'm so glad not only that you came here to share, with me personally, but with our entire audience, because again, this is a topic that I've never heard talked about, and I'm addicted to podcasts, and I've never heard it spoken about on a podcast. So thank you for sharing that, but also thank you for opening up about the stuff in fatherhood. I mean, that's such a cool. I've been waiting to. We didn't get to talk about it too much with Jim, but a lot of the guys we've had in here are in their early stages of their journey. I think about my friend Dan Polzello, who's a comedian, and he came on, and he's in these early innings of life still. He's 30 years old, but he's still, to me, it's so. I'm 28. I still feel so young. You got so much ahead of you, all those different developments.
Yeah, you do. And I remember, at that age, I was so anxious. Oh, I want it all to happen, and but you have so much to look forward to. So listeners at any age, right? But listeners at your age, it's all ahead of you. Just be patient. The magic happens, and when it does happen, you go, "Yep, this is the magic that I thought I had heard people talk about."
Yeah, and that's so good. Again, it's like these are the reminders that make me feel so much more grateful for this moment and where we're at, and who knows? It's we talked about too, like the. Relationships rule the world, and the people that you meet, you never know where they go. And as you were telling me about in this pamphlet here, which we're going to link the website into the description.
Yeah.
So please check out the website if you're listening. But you mentioned a criminology professor at Westchester.
Yeah, Westchester University, Dr. Michelle Bertina, and she and I have been able to work together now for 2 years, and it's a great relationship that we have. But when I set this nonprofit up based in near Manassas, Virginia, how could I ever foresee that I was going to build a relationship with a criminal justice professor from Westchester University?
Yeah,
couldn't have foreseen it. But now here we are, and we've done some great work together, and I'm very, very proud to be able to say that I've partnered with her. And
and again, you never, where that's gonna go. I can't wait to like you said, what is every year going to bring? And I'm excited for you this year. I'm so thankful that you came in. Thank you for coming up from DC and doing this, sharing everything with us. But if there's anywhere that people again can find you, or do you have any like events coming up that you'd like to share with people, or anything you'd like to bring attention to in this space?
No, we don't have any major events happening that I could share, but a couple of things I can share is our website. It's endefa.org. It stands for End Elder Financial Abuse.org. But if you go there, I have educational material on there, and I'm hoping to grow that in 2024.
Yeah.
So that's where I can direct people to. And when I start my 4th year, it's going to blow me away that, wow, we're here we are in year 4, and what we've created is actually working, and it's actually helping people. And that's the thrill of it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, congratulations on everything so far. And professionally, with your career, with the nonprofit, and also as a father. Can't wait to give me a call again when you get that call from your kids.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Greatly
Thank you, John.
appreciate it.
I appreciate it.